Welcome to Living from the Heart. I am your host, Tina Thrussell, also known as Woman Who Dances with Light. I am the co-founder of Best You Can Be, which I founded with my husband, L. Neil Thrussell, and I am a messenger of the heart, messenger of the Shin Dao. The Shin Dao is living the way of the heart, which is living with love, kindness, and compassion. And for yourself first. For when you have that love, kindness, and compassion for yourself, then it can overflow from your heart into the world around you and to the people that you encounter. Today, I am thrilled to have a very spirited woman on the show. I met Celine Williamson about a half a year ago, maybe a little bit longer, through the Spiritual Networking YYC luncheons. And I was immediately taken with this woman's energy, with her passion for living, with her passion for being helpful to people. The first time she came to a luncheon, she volunteered to be a greeter at the door because she was so excited about engaging with community. And I know that she has a long biography history. If I were to list all of the things that she's done and all of the titles that she has, this introduction would go on forever. But the biggest, most passionate part of her life that really takes from her heart is being an adoption activist. And so I'm excited to talk with Celine about that and other aspects of living from the heart. So just before I bring her on screen, I'd like to draw your attention to the little ticker at the bottom of the screen if you're watching live. It says Get Heart and Mind Matters at www.bestyoucanbe.ca. This is an inspirational article, YouTube video, quote of the week that goes out every other Tuesday morning by email. So that's BEST, the letter U, CAN, the letter B.ca. It's complimentary. We've been publishing it for something like 15 years now, have had subscribers all that time. So it's got to be good. And without further ado, I will simply invite Celine Williamson on screen. Hello.
Hello, Tina.
Welcome to the show, and thank you for agreeing to be here today.
Thank you.
So I said to everyone that you're very passionate about your work as an adoption activist. And I know that you played a really instrumental role in working with the Senate to open closed adoption records. And what is it that made you want to do this? What was the big draw for you to make this a part of your work?
Because first I had a personal experience with adoption, with especially the era of forced adoptions, which is now coming to light. That's what the Senate committee was about. It was to investigate that and then eventually make their recommendations and connect people, start opening adoption records and so on. But my personal experience was that in 1969, I entered a home for unwed mothers carrying a suitcase full of baby clothes. And a few months later, I exited without a baby. Mm. And so a whole lot had happened in those months in there. There were, we were really coerced, brainwashed, I would say, into surrendering our babies. So, yeah, it was really spelled out to us how we were not going to be adequate as mothers. We obviously had been abandoned to our own devices since we had to land in these homes. So, you know, families were not eager to deal with this. 50 some years ago, these were considered children of sin because I lived in French Catholic Quebec. And so that era was still, you know, happening. And middle class was emerging after the war. And so people, what other people thought was very, very important to people who wanted to be in that class. And so the unwed mother was really considered a black eye on society. And at the same time, you had, this was the era of pushing for the nuclear family. And so infertile couples were really eager to have babies, so they too could fit into that because that was a criteria for fitting in. And so there was this social engineering project whereby, well, they figured they'd solve the problem. You take the babies from over here and place them over there, and problem solved, right? So that, this became like a long-term solution to a short-term problem, really. And so this was an extremely traumatic experience. It was traumatic for both mother and child. I mean, imagine that baby, who's already connected in utero with the mother. The bonding has already begun. And so for them to suddenly be placed where there's absolutely no relatedness, no genetic mirroring, is very, very traumatic. And so at this time now in our society, I think PEI is one of the last provinces, and also Nova Scotia. They are poised to open their adoption records within the year. There's pressure now for that. There's been the Senate committee, which actually also voted to bring this to the House of Commons so that we would get an official apology, so that then that will bring on the other recommendations. That's really the starting point for this. And so, yes, I have been working actively on this for the last several years. I had a reunion almost 20 years ago, and I know what is required for that. I mean, you can't go in unprepared for either side, right? And so I had been working with, through psychogenealogy and esoteric arts and all kinds of things for years. That was my career. So in 2004, when Alberta announced that they were opening their adoption records, I thought, oh my goodness, there's no help, obviously, because it's still shrouded in secrecy. And so the type of complex trauma that this is and the type of help that would be required is non-existent. It's not known. So I thought, what can I do in my little corner with my tools, my toolbox, And so then it came to me to do, I'm a numerologist, basically. That's my first love. So to do a family chart where people could start to relate to where they fit in, where they belong. And so I thought, I color-coded the numbers on the chart, because we know from art therapy that color really tames the mind. It gets us out of the mental chatter. It helps you to access intuition, imagination, inspiration. All that comes from the right brain. And color, as we know, helps us to get there and bypass all the ego defenses and all, we go straight to the subconscious there. And I knew that buried feelings are not deactivated, right? They're just still simmering on the bottom. And colors helps to it gives buoyancy and brings the feelings up to the surface. So that my first experience the very first one was actually me doing my own chart with my family. And I looked at this and I thought, oh, now I understand so many things. And because I did it on the 3 generations, so that becomes now transgenerational patterns. And then the last one in the family, of course, that's the one that shakes the whole tree. And that's a new branch we're adding in. So we get to see what they inherited through the colors, what they inherited from this grandma, from that grandpa. Sometimes things will even skip a generation, right? And so what that baby shakes up in the family tree is just, it's so revealing. And because this is by no means to replace trauma therapies, which we do now have, it actually serves to, when you look at the chart, it's a wordless recognition of belongingness. Because you find yourself, even if it's on the different positions, because I've got all kinds of geometric figures on this chart, it's very Pythagorean, and at the same time very spiritual, and and so it takes in a lot of stuff. And so then the second one I had done was actually for a family of reunion. They had a reunion like 10 years earlier, and it wasn't going very well. because of course they had not been prepared. This didn't exist. And now there was another generation, and a lot of stuff was starting to show up in the grandchildren, the behaviors, there was, so that these unresolved issues were now showing up, and they were saying, we have to do something. So anyways, what happened was, when these ladies were looking at their chart, suddenly the adoptee who met her mother 10 years earlier, she just blurted out something really, really important to her that she'd never been able to put words to. She just knew that very uncomfortable feeling. It could not identify it, let alone speak it. And because the colors had put her in that space where it's safer, you bypass the ego defenses and you just get to it. And it was amazing what happened to these ladies in the next hour. It's like she had crossed a threshold. It put them in a place where they could now have a real honest conversation about the very, very difficult issues surrounding this. So I thought, I think I'm onto something here. This works. And I thought in my mind, this was like, to me I remembered seeing the movie Raising the Titanic. And I thought, all those feelings buried deeply. Well, it's as if the colors had created like buoyancy. And because they showed that in the movie, right? Buoyancy brings it to the surface. And I thought, oh my God, I think we raised the Titanic here.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, maybe I'm going on too long about that, but that's the story.
Well, it's fascinating. And I know that, so first of all, you became part of the whole Senate process to open up the records because you had the opportunity to meet your child that was taken from you. Let's put it quite literally. Mm-hmm. And you know how that affected you. But then beyond that, there's the work that you developed to help people cope, to get past the trauma, to heal that trauma of the past and come to better relationship. And you and I know a couple of common people. We both know them. And
nothing common about them.
Uncommon. They're very special people. But we both happen to know these women who are adoptees. Yes. And have had their challenges. Without the preparation that you're providing, they had the opportunity to meet their families, and that creates a whole new level of upheaval and disturbance and trauma in itself.
Yes.
So to have this tool, the what would we call it? Is it not a modality? Method, I guess.
It is a method, yeah.
Yeah, the method that you have to bring people together in a way that will be very gentle.
It's gentle healing, yeah.
Yeah, is so brilliant. And many people don't even realize how many adopted or adoptee kind of situations, because it has been hush hush. It's a quiet thing you don't talk about.
Yes.
But I know in my own family, we have several adoption situations. And again, no assistance for those people to be connected with their natural mothers and their families. And it's just, I think it's so brilliant, this work that you're doing.
Thank you.
To see you continue to do this and just bring this forward is very exciting.
Thank you so much. It was inspired work. Of course, this is, I'm just a channel. This is spirit, right? Spirit had something in mind for me. And so I had to answer the call, but it was so deep for me because I know the issues of abandonment for both mothers and children. They're coming at it from a different direction, but it certainly is about that. And all of the consequences, all of the physical and emotional and mental issues that arise from that. It shows up in the physical body. They actually now have some statistics on that. Like, for instance, with mothers, one thing that seems to be outstanding is fibromyalgia.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, connection there nobody would ever expect.
Yeah, fibromyalgia. And so I guess when you study the body systems, which I know in our group many of the people do, and how that's connected to that particular emotional trauma. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, and of course there's the also the psychological problems, severe postpartum with subsequent births, and infertility at 30%. That's huge, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, infertility and depression, of course, and for adoptees there are problems with attachment and other relationships and so on. But there's lists there on the Origins Canada website. There are lists of, you can see them, the physical and emotional consequences of this particular trauma. It's all listed there. There's like, a dozen each at least.
Wow. Wow. Isn't that something?
That's what's important. It comes to light now. People need to heal.
Yes. Yes. And I could go there and say, it makes me sad that this has happened and there's been no help. But instead, I'm going to say it delights me to know that you've been part of opening these adoption records so that the process of healing can begin. Because once, and for everyone who's watching, please sign the petition to have the government make that public apology, because the public apology, as you say, is where it all begins, right? Yes. Once it's acknowledged that this is a real issue and that it's nothing to be ashamed of, it's something that we can heal from and create beautiful relationships from.
Yes, and that's why it's important to do the doing the public awareness campaign, because for nowadays it's hard for people to think that this even could happen, and on such a wide scale. It was all the allied countries involved in this, right? Australia, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Canada, US, I mean, on and on, right? And because now for me it's 51 years later. For some, it's 60 and 70 years ago, but you may as well be talking about 200 years ago. Because today you would never fault a woman for having a child outside of wedlock, and to crucify her for that would be out of the question, right? Yeah. They have rights, they have help, they have, so everything has changed so much that it's even hard for people to wrap their heads around this and say, this happened in our society not that long ago.
Yeah, really, that is not that long ago. And
no.
And huge numbers, right? You said over 350,000.
350,000 in Canada, which that was from, so it's the post-war adoption mandate. That was mandated by the government. So that was from, let's say, from the, in the 40s right up until late 70s. So in that short period of time. So when this started, Canada's population was about 12 million. And by the time the mandate was lifted, we had doubled the population, but a lot through immigration, because we stopped producing. So then we started importing babies, voracious appetite for newborns, right?
Wow. Wow.
But also what happened in Australia had an official apology from their Prime Minister, Julia Gillard. It's on the internet. If you ever have 20 minutes to watch it, it is so moving, But when she did this, the others, they don't call them provinces there. They're territories and states. Yes. They all stepped up to apologize. Churches, the Catholic Church apologized to the Australian people for their part in this. Whereas in Canada, so far, all we have the United Church. Well, they unite, they don't divide. And so they showed up, actually, a reverend showed up for the Senate Social Committee, and really volunteered information on what their participation had been and how sorry they were. They're very sorry. They apologized formally. That's the one we got here in Canada. Wow. So, yeah, he leads by example.
Wow. Yeah, that is really amazing, right?
So that's why the others we hope would follow suit, because right now, if we don't get that apology, they're still saying, well, provinces each handle their own. So you know,
We
which
can
we know
wash
that,
our hands of it and not be bothered,
yeah,
right?
we know that's lame.
Yeah, that's very lame. Wow. So it again, this is such a meaningful issue from your heart. You said that you were just called to do this, so you couldn't
Yes,
ignore that call.
yes.
And that's been a common comment from the past 32 guests I've had on the show is that um, when that call happens, when that call from your heart is so loud that you can no longer ignore it, then you come to life, you become on fire, and you are assisted every step of the way, divinely guided, if you will,
Absolutely.
to the action steps to take.
Absolutely, because you still feel, and I'd had my reunion 4 years earlier, but I was still not like standing on rooftops, shouting this, on the rooftops and blah, blah, blah. I'm so happy. I was still, kind of, what do you call that? Quiet, introverted about this because I was not healed myself. I jumped into this, kind of blindfolded, but I just thought, well, whatever I have, whatever I can do. And then this color chart showed up and I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to be doing that. And so that was part of my own healing because helping others is how you heal yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cherie DeMeo said that on our show just a few sessions ago. She
Oh,
said, yeah, by helping others, we help ourselves. And I think anybody who's helping in some big way really gets that.
yes, because that's the trajectory for my work. I'm doing this public awareness campaign. Of course, we need to do that, make people aware, because first we need the truth. We need to know what happened. Right now, a lot of mothers, many who sign vetoes, they don't want to be found. Some of them have lived in 40-year marriages and their husbands don't know. Their other children don't know. The fallout would be monumental because that's how tight lid this was, right? We were admonished from ever speaking about this. It was flash frozen in time. So the healing has to do with you have to thaw slowly. Flash frozen is, you know what I mean? Like -40. Okay.
Yeah.
And so for these women, but so to know the truth, some of them don't even really know what happened to them because they were coerced into signing, because without that signature, they couldn't take the baby. So how that was done so covertly, they are left with the impression that they did this. So they've lived with guilt and shame and all these years. So for me, it's first to even prepare them to understand what happened to them. So that's truth. So that's information that brings us into compassion, because then you can have compassion for yourself, for that young girl that you've kind of set back there and said, no, we're not talking to you. But now you can bring her forward. Like we learned this in psychokinesis, that would be one of their tools. You go retrieve these parts, right? And compassion even for all that were involved in this, because imagine the people in that system, they didn't have a choice. It's not like they could blow the whistle. Like to this day, what do we do with whistleblowers, right? They get tarred and feathered. So imagine 50 years ago, that wouldn't have helped, even if a lot of them had a conscience happening, I'm sure. And so anyway, so we go from information to compassion to transformation, because what we want to do is we transform this now. So that's why we can't skip phases of this process. It's a process and it has to be respected.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of process, I know that we're running out of time, but I want to ask this question, and this is coming out of nowhere.
Okay.
You've developed this process specifically to help people with this adoption process, and yet I'm sure it's got to translate into other realms. So,
oh yes,
what about stepping into the world of young girls who had abortions. And again, that's a deep, dark secret that they've kept hidden. And it's all the, it's still a loss of a baby and all of that, hidden away, tucked away, never to be looked at again, but it's still in there eating away.
Oh,
Do you
yes,
think
yes.
the process would work for that as well?
Yes, I have tools for that. I do. And this also, the chart works for, because I was doing that already, but minus the colors, but for, your regular family, and even with the different generations. So your family of origin, your family you've created with your husband and children, step families. Oh, they are something, step families. And even, like in the workplace, because that becomes like a little family, your workplace. There's the pecking order, and there's the different hats that come to that table, right? And there's the personality clashes and all of this. And so to help understand like why that person responds this way or thinks that way, and it's really, really helpful in mediating conflicts.
Wow. Such a diverse set of applications. Like,
well,
what?
Yeah, because I brought all of my other tools. I poured them into this because I thought nothing can be left out. Everything is all one anyways, right?
Beautiful. So I want people to be able to know how to get a hold of you. So if we list your site, Kaylee.com site, is that?
That's the adoption site, but my main site is Celine Consulting, Inc., CelineConsulting.com.
CelineConsulting.com. I'm typing this in so that I could put it on. Oops, I did a little typo. Let's fix that. Put that on screen. CelineConsulting.com. I think that is correct.
Yes. And what comes up is my main page, which says, what are these people doing in my life? Because that's what people very often will come and say with relation. I don't know what's going on here. What are these people doing in my life? And then I thought, when it was time to revamp my page, I thought, why don't we just call it that?
What are these people doing in my life? Yes.
And so, at the top, you'll see that's all the different sites, the psychogenealogy, which, by the way, even if you're raised in another family, your family tree is still in you, right? It's not gone anywhere. So that's a huge thing. And there's the personal charts. I also have one. It's the child's name and destiny. Actually, that one is called What Treasures Hide in Your Baby's Name.
What treasures hide in your baby's name?
Yes, because all of their traits, it would be like it's a personality profile. It really shows you what, whether they're highly competitive or better suited to pursue mastery goals. The main objective is to encourage them to learning according to who they are. And so it's a very nice, gentle guide for, nowadays we don't say anymore, why aren't you more like your sister? Now we try to understand what each child is, what gifts they come in with, right? And so a lot of that shows up, of course, in their names, right?
My goodness, this could become an integral part of the school system. Like, what if people knew in grade 1 sort of like what your natural destiny was? Then we could encourage that instead of forcing children to struggle and get over their weaknesses, right? Let's improve what you're weak at. Instead, let's just focus on what you're good at and
exactly.
live a life that's joyful, because it's easier to do what you're good at, and it just doesn't make any sense to do it the other way around, and yet it is the way the world works.
Actually, I have a lot of grandmothers when they have a new grandchild, they get me to do the child's mandala. It's a mandala of potentials, right? It's a circle. It takes in everything, And so I get a lot of requests from grandmothers, and then they offer that to their daughter as a gift,
Oh, how beautiful. What a beautiful.
And also, I've had school teachers come to me, and we've figured out some things about some children in their classrooms where they needed an extra set of eyes, so to speak. And we've been able to decipher things for them,
How beautiful to pave the way for an easier educational path for children with this.
So they stop feeling like they're inadequate, not good enough. I mean, can you imagine the behavior problems they will develop because they're told they don't fit in and that they're not as worthy.
Yeah, I've often wondered, the number of children that are being diagnosed as ADD, ADHD, whatever. I think someone just took some time to understand them. There could be a lot of alternative methods other than drugs to deal with helping those children.
That's right, because the system is quite slow. It's only recently they've started diagnosing dyslexia. We knew a lot of people with dyslexia, but they would be labeled something not nice, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So take the labels off of children. I mean, yeah, that would be a big deal.
Yes. Oh, so much possibility, so much potential, and such a big heart to continue doing this work.
Thank you.
The way that you're doing. I so admire you. You're on my most admired list for sure.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you can't quit something like this. That would be like asking an artist to retire. Like, that's not going to happen, right? For as long as you can hold up the paintbrush or whatever, Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your knowledge to the show. I certainly encourage anyone who watches this or listens to the podcast later, this will be converted to an audio podcast as well, to contact Celine through celineconsulting.com and avail yourself of some of these beautiful tools that are available to you.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone who's watching.
Thank you for being on the show. And until next week, I will say ciao for now.
Ciao. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.